for real change. You're listening to MCJ, where justice meets action. You're listening to MCJ, where justice meets action.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Where Justice Meets Action. This is a production of the Mississippi Center for Justice. I am Dr. Tara Wren, Communications Director for the Mississippi Center for Justice.
And I'm Elijah Kareem, the Communications and Graphic Design Specialist at the Mississippi Center for Justice.
Each week, we will connect the law, the people, and the resources to help build stronger communities across Mississippi. This is our new show, and this is your show. And we want to hear from you every Tuesday morning between 8 and 9 a.m. We will be here. And throughout the hour, we invite you to call in with your questions, comments, experiences. So we want to say thank you for joining us for our first show today. So let's get started. Each week, we'd like to bring you a legal tip. So we'll let Elijah kick us off today with a legal tip.
The legal tip for today is the SHIELD Act is now in effect in the state of Mississippi. So we encourage you guys to go to our website, MS Center for Justice, to learn more. But the SHIELD Act is simply, it's creating barriers for you to vote. So we don't want you to lose your right to vote. So we encourage you to go to mscenterforjustice.org to learn more about that.
Yes, thank you, Elijah. That's coming up, and Election Day is November the 3rd. So we encourage everyone to be ready and to get out to vote. Okay, so for our show today, we have the leader of Mississippi Center for Justice with us, our president and CEO, Attorney Kimberly Jones Merchant. And I won't give a total bio of her because we're going to ask her all sorts of questions. She's going to do that for herself. But I will say that Attorney Merchant stepped into the leadership role at Mississippi Center for Justice a little over a year and a half ago, at a pivotal time, actually, as the administration of this country ushered in a wave of executive actions and legal challenges that directly affected our work, the work of Mississippi Center for Justice. Since then, she has helped lead the organization through rapidly changing landscape with confidence and purpose. So we're glad to have her here. I have found her to be exceptionally knowledgeable in the law, deeply informed on the issues, and an astute leader, actually. So, Attorney Jones, Kimberly Jones Merchant, we welcome you to Where Justice Meets Action.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really pleased to be here today.
Okay, so we just dive right into these questions. For those who don't know you, which is a lot of people listening to us right now, that's what the purpose of this show is, so we can bring Mississippi Center for Justice and you. And so we're glad to have this as the first show. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to this work.
All right, good morning. So as Tara has mentioned, my name is Kimberly Jones Merchant, and I currently serve as the president and CEO of the Mississippi Center for Justice. I am an attorney by trade, and I've had a very, what I would call, diverse and varied career in various areas. I started with civil litigation, doing cases in state and federal court. I then wanted to change. After doing that for about 9 years, I moved to criminal law. Believe it or not, in another lifetime, holding against me. I used to be a prosecutor for about 6 years, and that's really what led me to the work. After working at the DA's office, I then, for the first time, came to the Mississippi Center for Justice in 2012. And for 6 years, I served as the managing attorney of the Delta office in Indianola, Mississippi, as well as the director of educational opportunities across the state of Mississippi. At some point, my trajectory led me to another job, so I transitioned to the Shriver Center on Poverty Law. They're located in Chicago, Illinois, although I worked from my home in Greenville at the time. I became the director of what's called the Racial Justice Institute. And that was really game-changing for me because the Racial Justice Institute allowed me to work with advocates across the nation who both understood the importance of doing their advocacy with a race focus, and we'll talk about why that is in fact important, but also did economic justice. So I taught attorneys across the nation around doing this advocacy work and how to be impactful in terms of doing that. At some point, I left the Shriver Center and I began my own, what we call boutique practice. I was the city attorney for the city of Greenville, for the city of Indianola, and also the Hollandale School District. And then that's when MCJ came calling. And so I returned to the Mississippi Center for Justice as its president and CEO. So I'm back.
We're glad you're back. Wow. So you've been helping people and communities across Mississippi and beyond for quite some time now. So tell us though, what was there a moment or the experience that shaped the passion for this mission where Mississippi Center for Justice, of course, advances racial and economic justice and fight for social justice issues and civil rights across the state of Mississippi? What made you stick with that mission?
Yeah, well, I was working at the DA's office. That was sort of my moment. I was at the DA's office as a prosecutor. I learned in that job just the sheer amount of power and authority that the district attorney's office has to either change the trajectory of people's lives. And that's daunting to some extent, to know that what you do each day can impact someone's life, can take someone's freedom, and could also give someone their freedom. In the job, I was often called the social working DA. I really wanted to understand each of the defendants in the cases. I wanted to understand how they got to the point that they did, who they were, who is their family. You know, everyone shouldn't be thrown away, in my opinion. Everybody doesn't deserve to go to jail. A lot of these crimes that we're putting people behind bars about really doesn't require someone to be behind bars. We've got to find better and different ways for people to redeem themselves, to pay their debt to society, and it does not always require locking someone up. So with the authority that I had, and with that in mind, I oftentimes made deals that did not align with my district attorney. So we had a lot of, let's say, we had a lot of disagreements about what that looked like. And yes, I had a pivotal moment. There was a young man, I won't go into the details of it, but he was in college. And what I did would either put him on the path to success as a young man, or I could have stunned him right there while he was in college. That would have changed the trajectory of his life for the rest of his life. And I made the decision to give the young man another chance. But it was a decision that was against the advice, or really the director, just be clear, of my district attorney. And that was the pivotal moment. It had to be weeks. And maybe I'm just remembering differently, but I remember it being a couple of weeks after that, I got a phone call. And someone said, Mississippi Center for Justice is looking for an managing attorney for their Delta office, and I think you would be great. And then I started researching, and I saw what they did, and I was like, wow, I think this is where I'm supposed to be. It was literally God sent. Yes. He sent me where I was supposed to be at the right time. And so I applied. I was the first applicant. They moved really swiftly. I had an interview, and then 2 weeks later, they offered me a job, and that began my career in social justice, as well as my career with the Mississippi Center for Justice.
Wow. Well, we're so glad you were sort of a renegade that kind of got you over.
Y'all know me.
Yes. I would have to say we concur.
You gotta be to do this job. You gotta be.
Well, you do have to be to do this job, and you're doing great work and in the perfect position to just change all those things in people's lives, and people deserve a second chance. I actually believe that too. So promise you, we're glad to have you doing this work. Well, what motivates you every day to do this work? Because this is hard work, and sometimes you can't just go and fight for a day or a week or a month. Sometimes it takes years to change things. What motivates you to do this work, especially when these issues are so difficult sometimes?
Yeah, that's a great question. Turn on the news. If you're not motivated in this atmosphere, in this environment, I don't know what does motivate you. I was just thinking, if I had not taken this job, and I were like, a lot of people are just watching TV, watching the news, feel hopeless. Some people feel helpless. People want to help, particularly in my community. I go to a lot of community meetings, and this conversation is really happening. People want to help. People know it's time to fight. People see what's happening, and they want to be motivated. They want to mobilize. And a lot of times they don't know what to do. I'm fortunate enough to have a job where I wake up every morning and I know what I need to be doing to make a difference, to sort of fight back against what we're seeing in our nation right now. I feel like this is the second era of the civil rights movement. And we're knee deep in it, and I'm in the right place at the right time. So that's what wakes me up in the morning. That's what keeps me up at night. And that's what motivates me every day.
Thank you. I'm gonna kick it over to you, Elijah.
Okay, well, we appreciate you for being here with us this morning. But let's talk more about the Mississippi Center for Justice and why was it created and when was it created?
Yeah, so the Mississippi Center for Justice was, I guess, created in 2003. It was the brainchild of Martha Bergmark, who was our founder. And Martha had a very a long career in legal aid. She was I think, the director of Legal Services Corporation, which is the organization in DC that funds all legal aid across every state in the nation. And she also was the director of legal services in Mississippi for some time. So with that background, and at that point, her seeing what was happening in the world, she decided that there was a gap in the civil rights movement in Mississippi. There were no organizations that were doing kind of what the Center for Justice does now. And she wanted to fill that gap. And so through that motivation, filling that gap, she then went about to find the seed funding to start the Mississippi Center for Justice.
Okay, so speaking into what does the Mississippi Center for Justice do, if someone in the community were to ask you, what does MCJ do? What would you say?
That's a lot. So, our soundbite, the Mississippi Center for Justice is essentially a nonprofit law firm that fights racial and economic justice. And so that's sort of our mission statement. That is our guiding star. And everything we do is with that in mind. So that's the big explanation of what the Center for Justice does. If I had to drill down, I would say the Mississippi Center for Justice, and for me as a young advocate when I first came to the Mississippi Center for Justice, is a bit of I call it an incubator. It's a place where advocates can come who see problems across the state of Mississippi, who want to solve them, and they have a space to really think intently about why does this problem exist, and then more importantly, what can we do to change that problem? And we do that through multiple, I guess, tactics. Litigation, of course, because we're lawyers. So when necessary, but it's not always necessary, we will file litigation and pursue litigation. We help people day to day. We call them direct services. So we do evictions, for instance. We help kids with special needs in the education system every day get the accommodations they need so they could be successful. We help people with foreclosures. We do expungements. So we do that kind of work, just kind of on the ground, grassroots, folks just need help today sort of work. And then more importantly, we do the systemic work. And what I mean by that is we then try and figure out why are all these people in need and how do we stop that? How do we change that trajectory? And so we come up with solutions that really solve the actual problem rather than just helping person after person after person who has a problem. We do a lot of community outreach. Our work is centered in community. So we love for the community to be integrated in what we're doing. And most importantly, we want the community to sort of guide what we're doing. So a lot of what we do is based off the need that we see or that the community has articulated that they need. We do policy advocacy. So we will go to the legislature when necessary, change policies to sort of change some of the outcomes that we see in Mississippi. And we do community education. That means we'll go to community and we educate the community so they can also have the weapons they need to fight for themselves or understand the law in a way where they can navigate some of the issues that they see. So I'll stop there, but yeah, so we do a lot.
I like that, giving them the weapons to fight for themselves. I like that. So who can come to MCJ for help?
Anybody. The reality is that we are a nonprofit organization. We function from donations. And as a consequence, and we actually have focus areas, right? So we can't necessarily help everyone that comes to the Mississippi Center for Justice, but we do one or two things. If what you need aligns with what we do, then of course we direct you to the right place and person so that we can do that. If not, then we do our best to direct you to other organizations. There are many organizations in Mississippi that do different types of work. So if it's not something that we do, then we try and refer you to a place where you can get help.
Thank you. I'm going to kick it back over to Dr. Rand.
So I want to ask this question that I get a lot working for Mississippi Center for Justice, and I've heard you talk about it before, and I really like how you explained it before, that the Mississippi Center for Justice is only for minorities, Black and brown people. Is that true?
No, and having been the former director of the Racial Justice Institute, there was a question I got all the time. When you say you fight for racial and economic justice, people always assume they just help Black people. I have heard that so many times. So no, what it means is two things. First of all, we acknowledge the fact, particularly we live in a state like Mississippi, that the people who are the poorest, right, the people who are struggling the most are the poor, and the people who are the poorest happen to be people of color. And as a consequence, we have made a decision that we are going to focus on the people who need us the most. And in Mississippi particularly, that happens to be poor and Black people. Now, like we said before, anybody can call the Mississippi Center for Justice. And of course, any changes we make help others who are also poor. There are white poor people in Mississippi too.
Yes.
And we represent lots of white people as well. But when we put that in our mission, we are telling folks we are laser focused on helping those who need us the most. And check the stats, check the numbers, and you will see that's poor people and people of color. And so we have made a concerted effort to target those specifically. But the reality is everyone benefits as a consequence.
Thank you. I really like that explanation. I'm gonna start. We have to practice that a lot.
Get your elevator speech down.
Get our elevator speech together. Y'all just help Black people. No, we don't. We have everyone. So great. Thank you for sharing that.
Busting myths today.
Yes, myths. Myth number one. We have a myth section of this.
Oh,
Myth busters.
Yes. So when MCJ helps people, how do you move a person or people from crisis to opportunity? Kind of like you talked about the young man earlier. You have another example of that?
Yeah, so the reality is we're here as a helping hand. And ultimately, people moving from a space of crisis to opportunity really has to come from within. But we are helping hand along the way, hopefully, particularly if what it is something we can help with. I mean, we've got lots of examples of success stories at the Mississippi Center for Justice. You check out our website, www.mscenterforjustice.org. You will see video stories and others of success. The one I liked the most was a young lady who was who lives, I won't say where she lives, but a young lady who was seeking an expungement. She had an expungement on her record, but she was someone who wanted to make a change in her own community, and she wanted to run for mayor. And so as such, she had a charge on her record that prevented her from running for office. You know, you can't have a criminal charge to run for office. And she sought an expungement with Mississippi Center for Justice, and we helped her get that expungement. And she ran for office. She ran for mayor, and she is now the mayor of that town right now in Mississippi. That's the kind of success story. So did we help her get along the way? Yes. But we didn't elect her. She ran for office. So she really moved herself to a space of opportunity because she was self-motivated. And that's, everybody has that within them. So we're here as a little helping hand along the way as they get there. And we help in a way in which we can.
That's good. I love that story too. And we have lots of stories like that. So
Yeah.
like Attorney Murphy said, go to our website and take a look at some of those stories.
All right, so let's talk about voting right quick. There's been a lot happening recently. Can you explain the significance of the Cali case?
Yes, voting rights is a big one. And 2027 is a very important year as a consequence of that. The Calais case is a case that originated in Louisiana, where and let me just say, particularly with these legal cases, there's a strategy afoot. And what they're doing is there's a particular law that they want to change, that they feel like is a barrier for the agenda that they have. And as a consequence of that, they target major laws. I mean, the Calais decision is the Voting Rights Act. Right? That's 1960s, long time ago, Martin Luther King Day law that's been in effect for a very long time. And it's similar to Roe v. Wade, right? Roe v. Wade, which is the abortion law, had been in effect a very long time. And they came to Mississippi and they waited until they could find the right case to challenge that law, took it all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court and completely changed the trajectory of reproductive rights in the nation.
Wow.
So I tell people all the time, because I do a lot of fundraising outside of Mississippi. I go to the East Coast, West Coast, money, I'll take it from wherever it's coming, as long as it's good money. I don't know if there's any such thing as good money, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
And so, but my point is, and I tell people all the time, what happens in Mississippi can impact the trajectory of the nation. And Roe v. Wade was one great example of that. Anyway, the Cali decision is out of Louisiana. They did something similar. They were like, we want to attack the Voting Rights Act. And the strongest component of the Voting Rights Act is what we call Section 2. And Section 2 is what gives us as attorneys the ability to challenge anytime the lines are drawn in a way that excludes or limits our ability to elect people who look like us, people who represent us. You know, because there was a time when we had very few representation for people of color. We're in Mississippi. Now, we're not the majority, but we have the highest concentration of people of color, Black people, than any other state. And so you can't tell me that when elections happen and people are elected to go, for instance, to the Congress in DC, that they all will be white.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's that about?
Right.
So there got to at least be one. Can we have one?
Can we?
Right. And so that's really what it's about. So the Cali decision, the Voting Rights Act, Section 2, is the section that we use, and I won't bore people with the legalese, but the section that's used to challenge people's, you've heard the term gerrymandering the lines. Somebody's got to draw the lines and tell you where you fall. For instance, I live in Greenville, and there's a highway that runs right along by my house, and anytime they start drawing a line, that's where the line ceases. So people on my side of the highway always vote in one election, people on the other side vote in another. It can be confusing for folks sometimes, but that's the way they work. When they started drawing the lines, and all these group of people, like, they were no longer using that highway, I mean, it's crazy sometimes. So just one little line right along your street can change even who you vote for and where you vote. And it happens all the time. So when they start drawing the lines in a way, they want to add more white people in the district so that it's harder for Black candidates to win, right? Mm-hmm. Or sometimes they draw people in a particular way where they person can win. I've seen them draw lines and draw people out of their districts. Mm-hmm. And that's happened in Greenville where I live, where, dude, you used to live there. Now, guess what? If you want to keep your seat, you're going to have to move to this other district. And you can imagine. So that's what they're doing. They're playing with the lines in a way so they can control who wins these elections. All right, so back to Cali. The Cali decision, the Voting Rights Act, Section 2, they gutted it, basically. So essentially what it was is, when we go to court, we would only have to prove impact. And now what I mean by that is we could show the numbers. If you look at the numbers based on how they drew those lines, they just created a district where Black people just don't have representation in this district anymore, and that impacts the ability for them to elect someone who looks like them. And that was the law. They've now changed it from impact to what's called intent. So you got to prove actual racism.
That's hard to do.
And they know it. Actual racism now in order to win those cases. And they just took it a step further. So they already made it hard enough to change it from impact to intent. They also said, and if they say it's just politics, then that shows you what their intent is. And their intent is not racism. Their intent is just politics. And what I say to that is, this is Mississippi. Politics is race. And you can't separate them, right? Politics have always been about race in Mississippi. So that is what's happening. So we don't have the protection of Section 2 the way we normally. We file lots of Section 2 cases in Mississippi, and we have been very successful in doing that. And they know it. So they're really trying to cut us off at our knees. Now we're preparing now to try that little intent game, because again, we live in Mississippi. And it's cute because and I'm not calling no names, but people have been making comments around what they're going to do now that the law has changed. And those comments, in my opinion, shows their intent. And in my opinion, shows that their intent is racist.
Right.
And so as a consequence, that is the proof that we'll use some of it, at least, when we go to court to say that that this is an issue. So the Cali decision really gutted the voting rights, and that doesn't just impact Mississippi. Again, that's a decision that impacts the entire nation.
Oh, that was
a lot. I'm sorry.
No,
it's
very informative.
Yes,
good to know.
They're attacking our voting rights. That is something that we need to be cautious of.
But let me say this about voting in Mississippi. there's a lot of registration going on all the time. You see voter registration drives here and there, and that's great. If you're not registered to vote, you need to get registered to vote. Because if you didn't think your vote counted before, if you don't understand how it can count now, I don't know how to explain it to you. But this is a critical era at this time. But Mississippi does not, in my opinion, have a registration problem. There are lots of people registered. But every time there is an election, and I used to be an election commissioner in Greenville for years, every time there's an election, we have a turnout problem. If you could just get the folks who are registered to go to the polls and vote, that's game changing. I tell people all the time, I don't care what the numbers are in your particular district, white, black, and all that. Because we have a turnout problem, it's anybody's race. If you can get them folks that's registered to actually go out and vote for you, anybody can win. Because we have a turnout problem. You have only 20% of the people turn out to vote. I don't care who got the most, the advantage in that district. Just get the other 80% of people to come out and vote.
Right.
I mean, it's game. I tell people all the time. That's why a lot of times you'll see these sort of close elections. And it's sad when you see a close election because then it's like these other 80% of the folks didn't vote and you were like, it didn't have to be close.
Right.
You could have blew them away. So yes, registration is important for those who are not registered, but most importantly, you got to go out and vote.
Right.
My mama, she retired and she be in her bed and I'm like, Mom, come on, baby, put some clothes on because you got to go vote. And she's like, okay, baby, she put her clothes on. But I'm like, yeah, and nobody in this household not going down to the polls. Everybody up in here is going to be voting every election. That's right.
Yes.
So your vote matters. If somebody else says, I don't think my vote matters, I will scream.
So that brings me to the next point of voter turnout. The Supreme Court recently upheld Mississippi mail-in absentee ballot law. Why is it important?
So, we just talked about Calais, right? And then we got this new mail-in ballot litigation that happened at the U.S. Supreme Court. And I just want to say that these are not separate incidences. This is a concerted effort.
Yes.
A concerted effort. SHIELD Act, we talked about that in a minute. All these things, it's a game. It's an agenda. Because they're like, what can we do to weaken the vote? What can we do to reduce the number of people who are voting, who don't look like us? What can we do to increase our chances? And the mail-in ballot case is another example of that. And that is basically saying, well, the challenge was around, Mississippi law, if you are mailing in your ballot, and people who mail in ballots are elderly folks, folks who just can't get to the poll. And by law, they have a right to get a absentee ballot and to mail it in. Our military neighbors, community, who are not here, college students who are not here and won't be here on election day, who want to vote by mail-in ballot. So this impacts a lot of different folks. But for whatever reason, there is this idea that folks are stealing elections with these mail-in ballots. And it's always a challenge, an issue. I've seen it even in my community. It comes up every election. And so they're trying to gut the mail-in ballot. So what they're trying to do is limit people's ability to send in a mail-in ballot. Because right now in Mississippi, if you send in a mail-in ballot, as long as it gets there, as long as it's been postmarked on election day, they will wait 5 days after election day to see whether or not any ballots come in. And if they come in within 5 days after and they're postmarked, at least on election day or before, then they count. And they were trying to stop that practice. Again, that law didn't just impact Mississippi, although it started in Mississippi. That would have impacted 32 other states that have mail-in ballot programs. We're not the only one.
Oh, that is just a lot of things to do with voting. But in my legal tip earlier, as the show started, I mentioned the SHIELD Act, and it's now has it taken effect. Could you break down for Mississippians what that means for voters?
Yeah, the SHIELD Act again is one more attempt to stop people's ability to vote, people's ability to register to vote. And so just really quickly, the SHIELD Act is if you register to vote, but for whatever reason, all your stuff don't line up. So they got everyone in the system. And if you were married, for instance, and your last name has changed, or your or your name, for whatever reason, doesn't align the same as on there, you changed your name or something has happened around that, they will require you to basically prove you are who you say you are. And that's gonna require you to come up with a birth certificate, all that kind of stuff, a passport, a social security card, things like that. The difficulty that it is, and particularly when we're talking about poor communities, is sometimes they don't have those documents, or it's very hard for them to get those documents. And it's just one more barrier to people's ability to register to vote. It was something that didn't exist before that now exists. And it's really targeted to our immigrant population. That's who they're trying to keep from voting, even if they are legal citizens.
We've heard a lot. We've heard a lot of information, and you've been doing a lot of talking. So we're going to take a little break, and we'll be right back, you all.
Justice, action, real people, real change. You're listening to MCJ, where justice meets action. You're listening to MCJ, where justice meets action.
Welcome back to Where Justice Meets Action. We're here talking to attorney Kimberly Jones Merchant, the president and CEO of the Mississippi Center for Justice. And she was just sharing about voting and all these barriers that are coming up with the Calais decision, the SHIELD Act, the mail-in ballot initiative. And there's just so much going on with voting. And we're going to just ask a couple more questions about voting, and we're going to move on to our next section here. Elijah?
What can citizens do right now to protect their right to vote?
That's a great question. So you got to get ahead of the game, and that's for me and everyone else, because the last time I went to vote, I got up early and I was headed to Jackson. I was coming from Greenville to Jackson, and so I was stopped at my precinct that I had been voting at for years. Over 20 years, and I get there, like the parking lot's empty. So I'm just like, what is it? Is it time? I had to check the date of the week. I was confused. And so I called the clerk's office and I was like, we are voting today, right? And she says, yes. I said, well, I'm at my precinct and it's like crickets, like no one is here. And she was like, she had no answers. And I said, I need you to check and tell me where my voting precinct is. And I was on hold for about 15 minutes. And this the clerk, y'all supposed to know.
Right.
Y'all. She finally told me it had moved, and I went to the new spot. But I was just like, if I'm confused and have been voting in the same place for 20, you know what that is? That's a disruption.
Right. That happened to me too. I went to 3. It was my third stop, and at neither the first 2 stops, no one could tell me. Like they were not knowledgeable. They didn't know where my precinct had changed. One was at one church, and then said, "No, you're over there." I went to the church across the street.
Just confusion.
And it was total confusion, and they didn't know. So.
And if you were not a dedicated voter,
right,
people get frustrated. They like, you know what, I'm going home.
Right.
They don't want to vote.
I got frustrated.
And that's what they want.
Yes.
So that brings us back to the question: what should you do? You should get ahead of the game. Like we know this election is coming up in November. It's going to be critical, right? So I'm going to call. I'm going to verify first of all that I'm registered. Call your clerk's office. Call your circuit clerk's office or your election commissioner's office and ask, am I on the poll books? You got me listed, right? Where am I supposed to vote? Verify that where you're supposed to vote. And it's a small thing,
right,
but you need to know before you get there. And I'm going to tell you why it's important you call ahead of time. And we didn't talk about this, but another one of these barriers is nationally, they have been taking Experian data, and I do mean Experian, the credit card folks. So the credit card folks, everybody got some level of credit, even if it's 0 at this point. And they have basic information on almost everybody in the nation. You don't even understand how they collect data, and that's a conversation for another day. But they're taking this Experian data and they're giving it to election commissioners in a particular county. So I'm in Washington County. And they are using that data to compare to what they have on the voter roll. So if Experian got some old information on me on my last address, but I moved since then, but the clerk's office has my most recent address because I vote regularly, then they are going to flag me as someone who is, I guess, suspect. I hate to use the term. And then they send out a card, a little bitty postcard saying, Kim, your information not adding up. We're going to need you to verify. Now, first of all, mail system, sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't. Yes. Like they said they sent that card telling me my precinct had changed. I ain't seen the card. My mama got the card apparently, but I didn't get the card, which is weird. But anyway, so my point is, it's not reliable. But they'll send that to you. If you don't respond, then they make you inactive. They move you to a whole nother list just because you didn't respond to a postcard,
Oh, wow.
right? And for instance, in DeSoto County, we know more than 2,600 voters
That's a lot.
got moved to inactive
Whoa.
from these postcards. So this is very powerful. So yes, so my point is, check your information. Make sure they ain't moved you to that inactive list. Make sure they ain't moved you to no inactive list. Make sure you on the poll books, because if they move you to that inactive list and you show up at the polls to vote, you're gonna have to vote affidavit ballot.
Mhm.
If you're not on those poll books, everybody has a right to vote if you own the books or not. Even if you ain't registered. Let me just say, now, in order for it to count, you gotta be registered. But anybody can ask to vote affidavit ballot if you show up at a precinct. But the problem with that is also is if you show up at a precinct and you're not on the poll books, you need to verify you're in the right place. Because let's say you know you're supposed to be on the poll books, they ain't have you on the poll books, they mess your stuff up, and you demand to vote by affidavit ballot, but you're not in the right place. When they get ready to count the votes, your vote will not count. They will disqualify your affidavit ballot because you have to vote in the right precinct. So you got to make sure that you are on the poll books and that you have verified when you're supposed to vote before you get to the polls, so that there's no confusion on the day of. That's what I would advise people to do.
Wow, that's a lot. People, DeSoto County.
That's where we at.
Check your name. I'm going to check mine. You know, even though I feel like I'm on there, I'm still going to check it.
You've been voting all your life, and you just be like,
Right.
not on that time, and they make mistakes.
Right.
So you have to check it, right?
Right. Okay, well, we've talked about voting and all the issues there. Looking ahead over the next year, what are the biggest other challenges facing Mississippians that the Mississippi Center for Justice deals with?
Other than voting, because voting is a big one.
It seems like, well, we need to stay on for a minute.
Health.
Yes.
Health is a big one because, the current administration has taken the position that that a lot of these programs are like handouts.
Mhm.
So even the narrative, the story they tell behind the money that have been helping our community, they tell it in a way like these people have been getting handouts all their life, and so we got to cut these handouts. So my point is, the federal government has made a decision that they are no longer going to support in that way. So, SNAP benefits have been cut, and these are the benefits that help our children have access to health care. They have been tinkering with the Affordable Care Act for years, trying to cut it off, only because it was an initiative by a Democratic president, ignoring the fact that it helps families have medical insurance that otherwise did not have it, black, white, whoever. Everybody's using the Affordable Care Act at this point. That's the only reason why they haven't completely shut it down, because they know they're gonna catch it, because everybody's using the Affordable Care Act. But they are trying to reduce it. So healthcare is a big one. The question is, and if you can afford healthcare, it's expensive. It's expensive because of all the other things that are people. We're losing rural hospitals.
Right.
Look at Greenwood, they closing their doors. And you have to understand, people who live in Greenwood, like, they have to travel at least 40 to 50 miles to get to the nearest hospital now. They have shuttered blood transfusion, not transfusion, but diabetes. Dialysis, thank you, Lord. Dialysis treatment has been shuttered, closed. So people who, some people have to get dialysis 2-3 times a week. They're now having to drive 30, 40 miles to get to dialysis. There's no longer maternity care in Greenwood. If you are pregnant, you have to find you a physician and I don't know if there's an emergency, how that works, I have no idea. And then that brings up the larger question, what if there's an emergency? Because then you have to wait on a helicopter to come from Indianola or one of these other cities, because there's not one in Greenwood. So I don't know that's a crisis, in my opinion. If you live in a community where you don't have a hospital within 10 or 15 minutes, that's scary. So I think healthcare is definitely a big challenge, both, and then that's why this insurance it impacts hospitals. Hospitals depend on Medicaid, private insurance to pay their bills. That's how they get paid. And if folks can't afford medical care, then they're not going to the doctor. I was in the pharmacy. There was a gentleman ahead of me, and he was trying to get his medicine. The girl, was warning him that this medicine is expensive. She told him how much it cost, and he's literally standing in line trying to figure out which one of these I could take home. Now I paid for his medicine because I was like, how many? I mean, I don't understand
How
how.
do you choose,
Right. This
right?
is my heart medicine. This was
Right.
heart medicine. Because my mama took it too, and I knew what it was, and I was like, oh, no, we can't do that. But I'm not going to be behind him next month when he goes to refill his prescription. So that's scary.
Yeah.
And you wonder why people are dying early. It impacts longevity of life. So healthcare, I would say healthcare because it impacts so much across the nation in so many different ways. Doctors, hospitals, and individuals alike.
And MCJ does that work in health. We have a health justice campaign, and we do a lot of that work to focus on these
Tracking and watching the closing of rural hospitals, who has expanded preemptive care for mothers with children, because maternal health is a big one. We have a really high rate of maternal deaths, and so they've been tackling that. So yes, our health campaign has been working on these issues in a lot of different ways. And I'm just gonna say that's not the sexy thing, because there's no one calling who just necessarily needs an attorney or whatever. That's policy change. Like that speaks to what the federal government and or the state government has agreed to spend their money on. Like what's important to you, and that's why it's important to vote, because the people who go up there making these decisions, what's important to you? Like they got all this money they can spend, and they don't have a problem, gutting the White House or building something crazy in exchange for the Rose Garden, which costs billions of dollars by the way, but you want to cut health care for a family of 3 in Mississippi. So you have to, that's what's important to them. They've shifted what's important, and health is not the health of the citizens of this nation.
Such a sad thing. So again, that's why it's important. You know who you're casting that vote for, but do cast the vote
and track it. I just want to say this, don't vote blind. And we got to get away. And I'm not saying everybody does this, but voting for. I mean, I know our friends and the folks we know. He seemed like a good man. Do your homework.
Right.
Do your research.
Right.
And most importantly, if they're already in office and they're seeking to be reelected, check their record. All this stuff is public information. Like, how did they vote on this critical issue? Were they there? And if they weren't, they deserve a phone call, an email, a letter. What's up? I saw this came up, and you did not vote the way I anticipate you to vote, but I voted for you. So I'm trying to understand who you with.
Right.
Call them out. Ask them who they with. Because you'd be surprised how the people you vote for vote. And if you're not paying attention, they get up there and do what they want because nobody's calling them out on it.
Nobody's checking them.
Check the record. Check the record.
Well, what do you think MCJ's greatest impact is right now?
I think the voting thing, I know we talked a lot about it, but it's really important, and it's honestly, it's our focus right now. It's one of our focus areas for sure. I think our greatest impact is, and because we are a nonprofit law firm, is being at the ready to challenge these issues. They already having committee meetings now. You need to pay attention. They already talking about redistricting. Tennessee has done it. Alabama's done it. They've already redistricted those lines. Tennessee and Alabama redistricted their lines right after Calais dropped. They didn't even wait. They didn't take no time. They pushed it through within months. They had already redistricted, and that is impacting people. Now, we just won a Section 2 voting rights case before Calais that opened up the district for 5 new seats. So we've got some new senators and some new representatives that represent the communities that they live in and the folks who live in those communities. Redistricting could shut all that down, could completely reverse everything that we've done. So I think our biggest weapon as an organization, as a nonprofit, is the fact that we are housed by attorneys. And so will it be harder to do these challenges? Yes. Is that going to stop us from challenging it? No. So they are redistricting, they already meet, having committee meetings, so if they don't do it this year, 2027, they're gonna start January with the trust and believe, and we are going to be ready to challenge it as soon as they can try it.
Right.
They can try it.
We're gonna continue. Our theme this year is what? Take a stand.
Take a
So we're
stand.
gonna continue to take a stand on this issue of voting rights and telling you and asking you to take a stand with us, with your vote. So over the next 12 months, if you could accomplish one goal, I know it's probably gonna be about voting. What would that be?
Over the next 12 months.
After the election, leading up to the election, what would say, okay, I'm happy about that one thing. I know there are many.
Yeah, right now, honestly, as an organization, this may not be as, as sexy as some of the other stuff we talked about, but as an organization, structurally, I just want us to be sound as the Center for Justice. I think we've shown over the 23 years of our existence, the importance of kind of what we bring to the table. And so for me, over the next 12 months, I am, and I have been doing this since I started, continuing the trajectory of making sure that we're on solid footing as an organization. And that's both having the necessary staff to do what we need to do, making sure our offices are stable, meaning we can pay our rent. So if you ask me as the president and CEO, my job is to go out and get the money so that we can continue to do what we do. So my next 12 months is to ensure that I'm continuing to do that and even positioning us to do even more. More offices, more people, because the work hasn't stopped and the challenges have actually increased. So the demand is increased. And so we can't stay the same. We also have to grow to meet that demand. And so my job over the next 12 months is to make sure that we're poised to do that.
Well, speaking of, you mentioned offices, we have the main office here in Jackson,
Yes.
downtown Jackson. We have an office in Indianola, Mississippi, and we also have an office on the Mississippi Gulf Coast.
That's right.
What gives you hope?
The people I work with,
No.
coming to the office every day and seeing these advocates, they so dedicated, right?
Yes, they are.
Fired up. They fired me up. I've been doing this for a while. So to continue to stay fired up, there are times where things don't go the way we want all the time.
Right.
But it doesn't deter. So what gives me hope are people. The people I work with, the people in our communities that want to fight. I go to these community meetings. I had a little house party at a woman's house. And it was like, Kim, we want you to come. And I show up and they talking about voting. People care. People may not understand everything that's happening, but they know it's not good.
Right.
And they want to be a part of the change. And that's hopeful.
Right.
Just your everyday neighbor who's just like, what can I do?
Right.
And who's willing to actually do it. So that's very hopeful.
Right. That's wonderful, beautiful. That's one of the reasons for this show, so that we can provide folks with the information necessary, like what I like to call right now, useful information that they can use to make certain decisions and be informed.
For those who want to support this work, whether it's volunteer partners, advocates, or donors, how can they get involved?
I think the easiest way to see how you can get involved is going to our website again, mscenterforjustice.org. And on the website, there's a tab that says how we help, and then there's a tab that says how you can help. If you go to that tab, it'll tell you all the various ways that you can help. You can volunteer because we have clinics all the time, of course, and we need volunteers. We just did a big back to school event in Indianola, and hundreds of people came through those doors. And how many volunteers we have? About 20, 30? It was a lot of volunteers. We cannot do this without volunteers. Come into the clinic, and you don't have to be an attorney. You can sit at the table and register people. And we even have non-attorneys helping draft documents because attorneys are there to review them and make sure that they're accurate before they go out. There are lots of ways that you can help and volunteer at events and clinics that we do across Mississippi, because we don't just do clinics where our offices are. We're everywhere. We got a clinic coming up in Columbus, Meridian, we touch all over the state.
Finally, what's one thing you want every listener to remember after today's conversation?
You have to ask.
Go ahead and tell them again.
Rock the vote. We don't do nothing else. You vote, and you need to make sure everybody around you is voting too. Like I tell you, I have to get my mama up. Get your mama up. Out. Make her put her clothes on. Get your cousins.
Mama
your
them up.
sisters, right? There's no reason not to at this point. And there's so many people who offering rides and help. But if you could just secure your vote and the folks around you, that'd be game changing. And it sounds very novel. I mean, very basic, but it's game changing. You'd be surprised at people around you who hadn't voted. And I'm gonna tell you something. I figured this out. It's public information, so you could actually request to see who all voted in the last. It'll tell you. People who run for office, oftentimes when I was on election commission, they would get that information, and then they would lose the election, and then they would go back just to see, they try to do a post-mortem, find out what happened, how did I lose, blah blah blah, and they are mortified to see how many of their neighbors of folks that they know on the list that didn't even vote on the election that day, and you'd be surprised. So I just say rock the vote. You got to vote in November. There are so many critical elections on the ballot, game changing for the state. We cannot afford not to vote, and definitely not this year.
One of your Facebook questions is how to be fully prepared for the upcoming election.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the fully prepared is.
Someone asked how to be fully prepared for the upcoming election. I think we've covered this, and I'm gonna say it again. Call your circuit clerk's office. Call your election commission. First of all, just make sure you own that poll books. Verify you own it, right? That they got your information correct, and then verify where you are supposed to vote, so there is no confusion on election day.
Another question that I get all the time, that's a good question, it's good that they have to reiterate that, is do people have to pay for our services? We can talk about that.
Oh yeah, so we are a nonprofit. No, our services are free. And in some instances, the only time that money kind of is an issue is when we have to file something, like there's a filing fee. And one or two things happen. Sometimes we have grants that give us money to cover people who can't afford the filing fees, so we'll do that. And in some instances, people do, come up with what they need. If you need that expungement, they're gonna come up with the money in order to get the expungement. And then in other instances, we're fighting a fight now around the waiver of filing fees. So some filing fees can in fact be waived. If you can't afford them, there is a way to get them waived, because everybody should have and has a right to have access to the courts and the system. So that's something can do too. So our services are free.
Free. And we talked about the three different offices that we have. I mentioned those earlier. Are those the only three places or areas that MCJ works in Mississippi?
No, I think I said this. We work across the state. That's why we have three offices, because we're really trying to span the state. Center for Justice started in Jackson, and then honestly, the Katrina storm is why we ended up on the coast, because when the storm happened, we did like everybody else. We rushed the coast so we could help people, and that storm recovery took so long, we eventually just opened an office down there. And then, of course, we have to open an office in the Mississippi Delta. It is the poorest region of the state, and so it is an area where we feel like people need us most, and so we have an office in the Delta. And depending on what happens, and who knows, in these 5 years I might be able to get some miraculous donor so that we can open an office in the northeastern part of the state, like the Tupelo area, the Meridian area. So we open to expand, and that's actually very
exciting.
It is
exciting.
exciting.
Look at
So
you got excited about
see
that.
what happens. I don't know what the future holds. But yeah, so we're available to the state. Even if we are not in your community, you can call and we will assist wherever you are. We come to you.
Yes.
Yes.
And so you mentioned donors.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about how MCJ is supported, how we get our funding, how we do this work.
Mm-hmm.
Also inject in there our upcoming event, the Social Justice Empowerment Experience. Talk a little bit about that and what it means to Mississippi and our work, the work that we do.
Okay. So I tell people 75% of my job is to get the money. I gotta keep the lights on. So yes, the way we continue to do work, we have like 42 staff, 3 offices. So you know that comes with lots of bills. Folks need to be paid. They have salaries and benefits and things like that. And so our work is funded through a number of sources. Lots of it is grant funded. So foundations and various private entities fund our work. We also do lots of fundraising. Tara mentioned the Social Justice Empowerment Experience. That's one of our big fundraisers. We have a fundraiser each year along the East Coast. But the Social Justice Empowerment Experience is a 4-day experience. It starts on Thursday, October 29th, which is a Champions of Justice dinner. This is a fundraiser where we honor civil rights legends and people who are doing great work here in Mississippi. That day is followed by the Justice Brunch, which is held at the Mississippi Arts Museum. That following Friday, which is October 30th, where we talk about some of the issues. And of course, this year we're going to be talking about what?
Voting.
Voting. And then we have what's called a Mississippi, Great Mississippi Road Trip. And that is a bus tour that people can sign up for to tour both, civil rights history in Jackson, but also the Mississippi Delta. It also culminates talking about our work a little bit more. If you want to know anything about the experience or any component of it, or you would like to join or maybe participate, again, go to the website. This is the first thing you'll see. It'll pop up and just click the button and it'll give you everything you need to know.
Well, thank you so much, Attorney Merchant. This has been a wonderful conversation. Don't you think so, Elijah?
I think it was
This is our
amazing.
first show. We did good.
I think it was good.
Yeah, I did great.
We had the best first guest ever.
And I love the jingle.
Oh, nice. Oh,
Good job.
Yes. Well, thank you all for listening. That's all for this edition of Where Justice Meets Action, produced by the Mississippi Center for Justice. Thanks for spending this hour with us. We hope that today's conversation has informed, empowered, and inspired you to take action and to take a stand. If you missed any part of today's program, go to mscenterforjustice.org. We will have it posted there. And follow us on Facebook. And if you have questions that you didn't get to ask today, email us at communications@mscenterforjustice.org. Join us again next week for another conversation about issues that matter most to Mississippians. Thank you.